Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN. Today, we have a special guest with us to talk about a very special project. That is something I hope many of you will be interested to hear about, but also for those of you that are a part of Kingdom Management, you might be intrigued as well to hear about something that was a success or is going well that could be something you might be able to pick up on as well, or at least from your side. With all of that out of the way, let me go ahead and introduce the fantabulous Blodreina from Kingdom 110.
Hey, I'm so excited that I get to hear you do that intro in person.
Okay, all right, nice to say. All right. Hey, one of the
It's a running joke in 110. Like we literally joined the VC and we're like, yo, 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 yo.
oh, for real. Oh, that's dope. Man, I need to join and then wait until some other people join after I'm already in there just to see if there's just it becomes a standard greeting.
Yeah, yeah, you'll have to hang in with us sometimes.
Oh my gosh, no, that's awesome. Okay, so the reason we have Raina here today is she was heading up a project in 110. And before we get to that as well, Raina, you have to tell me, I believe Doom in your group there in 110, you all have not moved yet. So you have still been in your same OG kingdom since season one. Is that right?
That's that's correct.
Hmm.
I have not been here since season one. I moved here for the first season of Strife, but the core group of 110 has been in 110 since the very beginning. They have never migrated, not even when it costs gems,
Okay. Okay.
which is
Awesome.
crazy.
Okay. This is setting the stage quality style there. Okay. So now tell us about this project that you're doing because you messaged me about this and I was intrigued. It was something that is very much up my alley. For obviously anyone that watches any of my content, they know I love anything and everything that has to do with kingdom management stuff, especially if it is something that can have a good net positive impact on the community, on the player base there, and even to maybe what the general audience might figure is a lesser extent the management team there. So uh, go ahead, give us a little overview on what the project is and how did it come about? Like what was the driving force behind it as well?
Yeah, so 110 has been full since I arrived. So about 5 seasons ago, when I moved from Gen 3 into 110, my migration group filled up the server. And we have been full every season since then. And as you can imagine, that has put a real damper on our recruitment prospects. And we have had to get really creative and really spend a ton of time trying to get people migrating out when they are no longer playing. So I think every season we had, a team of people who were like reaching out to individuals and messaging them and trying to get them to migrate. And then a couple of seasons ago, we also started like pooling together, like raising funds for people who couldn't afford to migrate. We would pull together funds for them to pay for them to migrate. And then the devs released the expulsion. And I'll be honest, like we were originally incredibly disappointed in the expulsion feature for kings. And I know that Doom like did the video with you where he showed you how it all worked.
Yeah.
But like we just like weren't intrigued by the idea of having to pay for people to get off of our kingdom. Because I think like the thing that a lot of people may not realize about 110 is like we have been one of the largest kingdoms for quite a long time now, but like we are not super spenders. Like we have a couple of people who are willing to spend, I would say probably close to a dozen of our like higher spenders, but then the majority of the kingdom is like mid to low spenders, and we do have quite a few FTPs. So um we're not we're not one of those kingdoms, like love Jason from TFS, but like the man will spend money like it's going out of style. And like I have no doubt that like he would be willing to expel people without a thought. So when the expulsion thing came out, we were really excited. And then it actually came out and we were like, oh gosh, okay, we're not going to be able to make that work. But I think what we realized is over time, you know, we were being kind of less and less successful getting people off the kingdom because you kind of end up with this group of like people who are unresponsive or they don't care about you and your kingdom. They're just hanging out to hang out. Um, and that was growing over time, and our recruitment wasn't. We weren't able to recruit very much, and so we were like really facing a choice here. You know, like we were like, we are probably gonna have to migrate. But one of our other council members also was like, you know, maybe we could try the expulsion. Like, I don't think people here are going to have enough tickets to migrate or permits to migrate. So, like, what would it look like if we did the expulsion option? And so, what we did was we collected the information from all of our players. Right, we asked them how many tickets they had. You know, we did a bunch of analysis on like the scans that we have of our kingdom to figure out, you know, who needs to move off and compared to who's on the roster. And um, basically, I mean, it turned out that like it was gonna cost us a lot to migrate. It was gonna cost our players a lot. It was gonna cost like our community a lot because we were all gonna have to fund together, right, for the people who can't afford it. So you know, we initially were really kind of clear that like migration was probably going to be the right option. And like, you know, I even started like getting a server together to like move us. But then, you know, like when the data came back, we were like, you know, actually might be cheaper to expel these people. And then we also had an idea. We were like, well, what if we, because right now the expulsion has to be performed by the king.
Yeah.
So we were like, what if we trusted our players and we let them use the tickets they already have, and we just funded, you know, the $20 that you have to give somebody because, you know, to do an expulsion you have to do all the migration tickets that they would need plus $20. And we were like, well, what if we took the tickets from the players who already have them and we just gave them $20 and we gave them the king for a minute and said, here, expel this person. Like, could we potentially pull this off?
Yeah.
And I mean, the answer is we did. We did. Our server is squeaky clean now.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
we did it in one season. We did it.
so the last part there. So you said you gave the players that you wanted to expel. You're saying you gave them king so they could get in.
Mm-mm.
If it was the
No. Yeah, we gave our community members. So we just like put a call out to like
okay.
all of our core members, and we said, you know, hey, if you have permits, migration permits that you are not planning on using unless we migrate, can you reach out to us and pledge them to use towards an expulsion instead?
Okay.
And so we put out that call. We got a response from over 60 of our members who had a reasonable amount of tickets saved up, migration permits saved up. And then we paired that with cash pledges as well. Because, like I said, you know, we do have a few spenders who are willing to kind of give money in the
Yeah.
name of the kingdom. And so we paired those with cash pledges so that, you know, like, you know, I was one of them, for example. I had 55 tickets to give because that's how long it's been since I migrated to 110. So I had 55 tickets to give, and then I was willing to give the 20 also to the kingdom. And so when it came time to do the expulsion, I got king, and then I was given a name, or rather, I gave myself a name because I'm leading the project. But and then I expelled that player, and then I passed it on to the next person, and that person expelled their player.
Oh, I
And
see.
so
Oh,
and on and
okay.
on
So,
and on.
so
Yeah.
I think that's the part that maybe that I was looking to understand is that you have to be king in order to give the permits away to the person that
Mhm.
you're expelling.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now
In
now
order,
now
yeah,
I'm
in
over
order to perform an expulsion, you have to be king. So,
order.
which I think is controversial for some kingdoms. Like, I don't think every kingdom would be willing to do this. We definitely have a very large core group of players that we trust, and so
Yeah, no, that's wild. I mean, and so
but
okay,
yeah,
no,
you
I'm
have to
gonna want
give
to. No, I
them king
appreciate
in
you
order to do
really.
it.
No. Like that is so fascinating to me, and I do want to circle back, but that's why I wanted to just have a good understanding there of of exactly what you were saying, where basically you were willing to rotate just average is more or less some average Joe players in your, like some R1s, R2s, essentially.
Mhm.
And because they had permits available that they were willing to give, transfer, send, whatever word you want to use, assist, people that you wanted to expel, you were okay giving them king. They took king, and then they expelled the player, and then they handed you king back. So
Yes,
it just
yes,
okay,
that's correct.
okay,
Yeah, it's complicated, and I
yeah,
will say, like, we were nervous about it too. Um, so I think what I ended up doing was kind of like the easy version, which is, yeah, exactly what you described, right? I hand somebody king, I DM them the like player ID and the name of a
yeah,
player, and then and the instructions on how to perform an expulsion, because most people, you can't even see those
yeah.
buttons,
No,
right? Unless you're
exactly, yeah,
king. So most people are like, where do I go? What do I do? Yeah, so I'd send them the instructions, I give them the name of the player, they would perform the expulsion. I can see, as a player in a kingdom, you can see whether or not a player's been expelled if you go into the screen for it.
yep.
So I could verify that they had completed the expulsion, and then I would just say, like, take whatever commemorative selfie you want for being king for a minute,
Commemorative
and then
selfie.
give it back
Hey,
to
oh my
me.
god, that's such a good like unique selling point as well for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It was fun, but yeah, and I think we came up with a number of contingencies when we were planning, because we were like, like, what if we have somebody that, we're not 100% sure
yeah,
about,
yeah.
or like, what do we do? Well, so we're a kingdom that has multiple shells. And so our plan was, like, if we had somebody we were kind
Oh,
of
I,
nervous about
I already see what you're
who
saying. Yeah,
pledged.
yeah. Use a second, or use like a weaker shell, so it's just like two or three people in there.
Yeah,
They
or
take it,
just
so it's an easy
do
recap if
it
you need.
while yeah, exactly. Do it while the dragon is open.
Yes. Okay.
So transfer the king, do the thing, and if something happens, like if it gets weird, you just take the dragon with the other shell,
Yeah.
and then you got it back. Everything's okay.
Yeah. No, I no. I
And
mean,
then the worst case scenario, you've lost a shell, which is like not a big deal.
and again, that in and of itself, like just the fact that you guys. I mean, God, I mean, there's first off, there's so many layers to this, but let me so
Yeah, there are.
let me backtrack in the beginning here. Because again, this is one of those things where I already have multiple questions. Like this is just again, I think this is fascinating. Obviously, kind of a lesser of two evils situation, because I don't think anyone wants to be in a situation where you have to basically pay for the people to leave.
Of
And
course not.
you
Like,
know,
I don't think anybody wants to be in that situation, but it happens.
yeah, and we're here, and before we really, I guess, dive there, one, and because I've talked to Doom about this a couple times, and I've pitched him my idea, and it's funny because I feel
Mhm.
like other people have pitched my idea or a variation of my idea, which is basically doing like the prison kingdom, right, or like the expelled kingdom,
Mhm.
where you just have
Yeah, and I'm totally with you. I really wish they would do something like that.
yeah, and it's like you just have a separate kingdom, and that way anyone who gets expelled, there's no cooldown timer. Is if you expel someone, they're just immediately expelled. But obviously, you get a limit on how many you can do. And the moment they're expelled, the next time that player logs in, they're in this kingdom, and the kingdom could be called
Mhm.
zero. Like it doesn't have to have a number; it could just be zero, right? It could be that simple. And that kingdom is just basically where all the expelled players go, and then they can get like a 10% discount on permits. They get like double rate of permits in the alliance. So, obviously there's some benefits there, right? But it's not super massive.
Mhm.
And you could still join alliances. You could still participate in any of the PvE events, right? Basically anything kind of non KVK related, right? You could still participate in.
Mhm.
So that way, it's not like you're getting handicapped by any means. You're not being restricted really obviously with the exception of just not being able to participate in KVKs, and then
Mhm.
again anything KVK related, and then you're just there until you either get enough permits or you make the purchases yourself at a discounted rate. So and then you move on. But like to me, I feel like that solves a lot for a number of
Mhm.
people. Because how do you feel about the cooldown? Just on that part, like to me, I think it's 5 days is what someone told me. Is that right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
5 days once you expel someone until it takes effect. Well, and the other part I didn't know is they can accept it. So they can accept it early. So it's 5 days is the
Okay.
maximum. And I can share screenshots with you if you want to see what it looks like when somebody gets expelled, because we did have a couple of people who were willing to kind of share that stuff with us. But
Okay.
yeah, you get a message the next time you log in, you get a message on your screen that says, "Hey, you've been expelled for the kingdom," and a little bit of explanation text, and then it says, "Do you want to move now or move later?" And if you choose move now, you go to the safe island immediately, right? You're
Okay.
no longer in the alliance. You're no longer counting towards the server.
So
You're in safe island. You can't PvP anymore.
that's where I see, like, I'm looking at your guys' discharge record right now on 110, and I see some people that are, it
Mhm.
says status safe zone. So that's what that means.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's what happens to you after the timer goes down too. So but that's the part where I was confused, because like I was like, how are they going to the safe zone already? I didn't think like that was a thing you could do. And then we had somebody send us the screenshots. And
Yeah.
yeah, so if you choose move now, you go to the safe zone immediately. If you choose
Okay.
move later, then your countdown timer keeps going. And so you can stay with the group until you're ready to leave.
Yeah.
So I will say, unfortunately, we had some people who chose to move early, and they missed their season rewards because they
Oh,
weren't
damn.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
because of the timeline of last season, right? We started expulsions right, like, as soon as we could after Dragon
Mm.
opened. Yeah, so, like, we were doing our end of season review, and then we started the expulsions pretty quick because we had to be done the day season rewards came
Yeah.
out. Like, that was the day, and I didn't wanna process 30 expulsions on that one day. That was just like way too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we had to be done that day, thinking that we were going to have a normal home kingdom timeline, which of course we did not, and like that was the whole thing. But story for another time, right? Um, so yeah, so we did have some people, they accepted their expulsion early and they missed their season rewards.
Okay. So if you had to go back and do that again, or just going forward in the future, do you feel like if you're on top of the expulsions, and because again, I'm
Mhm.
assuming that you saying that you did this big expulsion project is basically like your guys' first time doing it, compared to maybe a kingdom who's like on top of it every season, where maybe you're only doing a handful at the most, right? Give or take, compared to
Yeah, and
if,
that's where we'll be at now.
yeah, compared to like if you're just cleaning and finally trimming some
Yeah.
fat for the very first time, you're probably going to do more this time around. But is that what you would
Yes.
say, like going forward in future seasons, like that you would say that's the aim, is like let us try to have them get expelled after the season rewards?
I think it depends on your aim,
Okay.
So for us, we used expulsions to help people who were willing to migrate. They just couldn't afford it. And it was
Okay.
actually just cheaper for us to expel them using somebody's pre-existing tickets than it was to pay for their migration. So, which seems ridiculous that expulsion would be cheaper than
Yeah.
migration, but that's the way it just kind of worked out. So I think because we were expelling people that we didn't have any bad blood with, they were willing to leave the kingdom, or they understood that, like, they weren't quite up to the level, or like they wanted to take a break, whatever it was.
No.
I think because of that, I would either I would either include it in the messaging, and I think this was just a part of it. Like, I would have probably told these people, hey, don't accept it right away. Wait until you get your season rewards and then you can accept it. Or yeah, I would have tried to put as many as I could after the season rewards came out.
Yeah. I guess it
But
also
5 days is a long
depends.
time.
Yeah, and that was the, I guess, the first part. I guess the second part for me is that most likely it probably depends. I would imagine then if they care about the season awards, or if they performed well enough to want to get those at the end.
True. Yeah. Somebody with no merits is not getting
Yeah.
much in the way of season rewards.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, but the 5 days to me seems like that's just way too long. Is that something you guys have talked about? Like, and if so, what would you like to see that? Like, would you rather have it be immediate or conservatively 24 hours?
Also, recovery vouchers are 3 days, and I think that's about the right amount of time,
Okay.
to be honest with you. Like that gives them a little bit of time to accept it early if they want it, but it doesn't like put a undue stress on the timeline. Because that's the thing is like the devs have really hampered us with this timeline. So season rewards come out. You've got 1 day until you go back to home kingdom. You've got 1 day for migration, and then registration starts, and you've got 3 days for registration. That's 5 days before matchmaking
Yeah.
starts. So like that's I mean that's the reason that we expelled all those people before the season rewards came out, because I was counting back the timeline and I was like we have to get these expulsions done, man, because matchmaking is going to start and we need them gone before matchmaking, right? And we can't assume they're all going to accept early. So, and I like I said, I didn't even know that was an option when we started. So yeah, so I would say like 3 days is much kinder. I don't know what you need 5 days for, to be honest with you, like to get your revenge.
just gonna, just
There's
gonna.
a
I'm
it's
gonna
it's
milk
really weird because
leaving. Like you're dragging your
it
feet while you're getting out the door.
yeah, exactly. That's what it feels like. And it puts icon above somebody's city. So like you can see who's been discharged and hasn't left yet.
Oh,
Because they have a banner with that's like torn in half
and that's
above their
available for
city.
anyone that's in the kingdom to see.
I think it's available for anybody to see, but
Okay.
definitely everybody in the kingdom can see it.
Okay. Okay.
Because yeah, we had people reaching out that were like, "Was so and so discharged?" Yep, you can see it.
And you know, one of the things I noticed is that when you're going into a kingdom and you look at the discharge record, if you scroll all the way down, you can also see the people who've migrated out.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, so you can see, and then I use that to like I can use them in the search lords thing and figure out where they went.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, no, exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because we keep records of all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, which is great. And you know, this is the thing. I wish they did this as well. So they had this thing in Rock. I don't know. Did you play Rock?
I did not.
Okay. So in Rock, they have this thing. It was maybe around 3 years into the game, and it only was out
Mhm.
for maybe one KVK season. It was very short lived. Sadly, I thought it was a great idea they did, but they just needed to do some tweaks on it, not remove it. But they had this thing where they would track every migrant that entered a kingdom and exited a kingdom.
Mhm.
And I loved this. But the challenge was, and this is where their system was a bit flawed, is because every time a new migrant joined the kingdom,
Mhm.
everyone got a system mail.
Ooh,
It just so you have to
that's rough.
yeah. So you have to imagine and assume people gonna be sliding into their DMs,
Mhm.
like it's Chinese New Year. I mean, it's just
Yeah, yeah,
so
absolutely.
the and when I was a part of management for some of these kingdoms, it was one of the first things I noticed during this time, or at least for the one kingdom I was in at the time. And I remember because I was one of the people who did migration and recruitment, so I obviously would reach out to the people that are
Yeah.
coming in just to make sure that everything's okay, they're good to go, we get them placed, etc. But one of the things I would hear from these players that came in when I was corresponding with them and initially reaching out is, yeah, you're like the 10th message I've got just in the first hour of being here. And I was like, oh my God. And
Oh no.
so it's just the only thing I wish they would have done is like leave the system in there, but make it so
Mhm.
just like the kings and queens or the people that are a part of like the
Yeah,
king
okay.
management.
So you can't see this unless you're the king,
Yeah.
but there is a log now. So if
Yeah.
you go to Realm Records and you're the king,
Yeah.
there's a third icon on the left there
Oh,
that
there is.
has your immigration. Yeah, it has an immigration and discharge log, and it also tracks people coming in.
Oh, okay,
So
nice. I mean, you
yeah.
can. I could see that off the vouchers. I think it's off. Oh wait, no, my bad. This is off vouchers sent, but I think that's just the recovery. That
Yeah,
doesn't
so
tell me
exactly.
a
So
new
these
migrant
these
who's
kind
coming
of
in. Yeah.
separate them.
Okay.
Yeah, these kind of separate them. But then if you're the king, there's a third option there, and it's just the log. It's
Oh,
just
that's
the
awesome.
migration and immigration log.
So you
Yeah.
can see
And
just
it's
standard
really
migrants that
cool
come
and
in.
really helpful. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's awesome. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But so
I
okay.
mean,
Well, that's
not
great
that
to
it
hear then.
matters
There you
because
go.
like
See, I'm
now
learning something new
we
now.
have to accept everybody, so it's a
Mm,
different thing. But
yeah. But I mean, but that's great to hear. I mean, the thing that's interesting is that they don't show you off of Realm Records. They don't have an immigration tab, right, to show you like
oh,
to
yeah,
show
I think that's the thing that's
or no,
missing.
maybe
Like,
it's migration management. I'm tripping. I'm trying to remember where it is, like where. Oh no, it is. I'm sorry. It's in migration applications, but you guys don't have anyone there. It's just the difference is they don't show you that information isn't
oh
saved.
yeah, and somebody's only there when they apply,
Yeah.
right? Once you accept or deny them, they go away. And like there should be a log for that, I think. Um yeah, but yeah, no, there is a log in the realm records section and it shows all that kind of stuff. And it
Yeah.
shows also like how many migration points you reclaimed from that person.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've covered this, right? You know, like you get what is it, 40% of the migration points back. I mean, our special migration score is going to be freaking insane. I think we reclaimed like 240 special migration points. Not that we ever need them now, but
Yeah. No,
um,
absolutely. And I mean, you guys are at 3825 right now, but I
mhm. And we've
imagine
taken free in too.
yeah. But I imagine you have more people that you're planning to bring in, I guess, beyond that as well, if that's right.
Yeah, so we don't want to be full again.
Yeah.
So we are being very picky. We, as a kingdom, really need infantry and cavalry players. So we are only taking infantry and cavalry players right
Okay.
now.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So
Little
if
plug.
yeah,
Little plug.
little,
Uh,
little plug if
little
you
plug.
are one and you want to join a great kingdom.
So okay. So let's and just for some history here as well, right? Because
Mhm,
I've been keeping stat data for a while, and at least
mhm.
one of the top stat line item or fields that I've covered is for top kingdoms, and at least for one of my sheet records, I mean, you guys were the number one kingdom
We were
back in
six.
June
Yeah.
of last year, right? At the time
Mhm.
that I pulled, I think it was on June 11th when I had pulled the data, and at least on
Yeah,
that
that
date.
was
So
right before I migrated.
yeah. And so back, so I mean, again, it's been a year and 110 has consistently placed in the top 25 since then. So it's
Mhm.
very true to that effect of you saying you guys have basically kind of been in a similar situation. And obviously it feels like with now the discharge feature coming out, you could argue that it is kind of somewhat of a blessing and a curse, blessing in the fact that you can at least trim some of the fat off. But the curse and the fact
Mhm.
is that you have to pay and basically out of pocket and out of your own without having an easier way to kind of get people out of the kingdom overall.
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating, you said earlier, is that you weighed the options. And I think this is such a massive point is that you stated we basically we put these things on the pendulum or on our
Mhm.
so what is it? I'm forgetting what this our science scale, and said, okay, on one hand, we have let's just migrate all of our eligible fighters, etc., out of the kingdom. Okay, let's see how much that cost versus how much
Mhm.
fat do we have to trim? How much leaning do we need to do? And then how much would that cost?
Yeah.
And the fact is that that's why I was kind of making that little mention before of it just kind of feels like it's a lesser of two evils. But at the end of the day,
Mhm.
listen, I'm all for people staying in their kingdom if they are able to. And I very much believe that there has to
Yeah.
be an easier way and hopefully a less
Well, and all
costly
the
way.
bigs have moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the big servers have moved. And I think that was something that we didn't want to do. And I mean, people were so anxious about it. Like we had a town hall where we kind of announced, like, hey, this is what we're looking at. And like people were pretty upset. Like they understood, but they were still kind of like, we don't really want to do this. And we were like, listen, like we don't
Wait, was
want
that
to
for
do
you
it
migrating out, or was this for
either.
the expulsion project idea?
This was for the migration. Yeah. So I think that was the thing that like really kind of got people geared up to help with the expulsion project because they were like, well, we don't want to migrate. Like if we don't have to migrate, let's not migrate, you know? So they were willing to give up their permits that they had been saving or in some cases buy a few permits or, whatever they had to do in order to, make sure that we didn't have to migrate. So, and I know like there's younger servers out there that, when you look at the stats, I know you're a stats guy. I love looking at the kingdom stats and stuff too. And like there's definitely servers out there right now that like are headed for that same kind of trajectory where, they're gonna end up full if they don't start getting people out. Like I don't know if you've looked at RFF stats lately. They're over full like we
Oh
were.
yeah, no, I
And
did. Yeah, they were
and they're
at.
not very big. They're not big enough to be full like that. So
Yeah,
they're gonna have to do some cleanup, and I think they're a good example. There's a couple of other good examples
yeah.
in the
SSG's there,
list. And like,
BTX is there. They were SM. They were Special Migration 91, which was RFF. SSG and BTX are 154,
yeah.
155. So they're a decent bit over.
Yeah, exactly. And then like there's some that are close too. Like server 62FG is 3926. So they're getting really close and they're on the small side. 25IL from 225, like they're also on the small side, but almost completely full. And
Yeah,
like,
30 NAs up there
I
too.
look at those kingdoms and I just see us, I see us a couple of seasons ago, like really struggling against the capacity
Yeah.
and trying to get people out and constantly seeing people on our server, during home kingdom's a fun time because you get to see all of the farmers that are just kind of hanging out on your server. And like we would go out and talk to them and be like, hey, like, maybe you should consider moving to a server that like is a little bit more chill. Like this is a really competitive server. And they'd just be like, nah, like why would I? And we were like, oh, okay. And so we didn't really have anything to do with those people. And so for like 2 seasons, we've been giving them recovery vouchers to keep them off the matchmaking score, but we're limited in how many recovery vouchers we have. So like we were like, well, we need to get rid of these people. And so yeah. And when I crunched the numbers to do the migration, I think we needed something like we had like an 8,000 migration permit gap. That's how many we would need to migrate our full like active fighting group to a new server. And then in comparison, I think it was like 3,000 tickets or something like that to get every single player that we would want to get off. And of course that changed a little bit over time because some people actually did go inactive and dropped off the capacity list and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, in total, we had something like 25 people help with getting how many people, like 45 people off the server this season, and then I held back about half the people who pledged. So we've still got like 25, 30 people who have pledged tickets or money to help with this in future seasons. So yeah, it went pretty well, I'll say. And like I think a lot of people are really glad we don't have to migrate because like I said, they're stubborn here. They're stubborn here. I've migrated a few times, so like I'm not one of those people, but yeah, they were not looking forward to it. That's for sure.
I mean, I could only imagine. I mean, especially, you guys do a town hall, you say, I mean, listen, I don't think anyone, if they don't have to, right, is not going to be jumping up in arms saying,
To migrate,
yeah,
yeah.
oh, guilty, golly gee me. I'm so ecstatic to be able to spend some money right now or whatnot to leave. It's just like I could understand it if you're maybe in like in a very extreme situation and maybe the numbers are a little bit closer and you don't want to go through doing as much legwork. But you telling me right now
Yeah.
that even if you're just estimating or averaging, it would have been 8,000, permits to move everyone versus the 3,000 or so that it would have costed just to move the dead weight off. I mean, that to me just seems like an absolute no-brainer at that point. Now, obviously, it comes with some legwork, right? It comes with a little bit
Mhm.
of effort that you have to put in to make all that happen, versus maybe what would be a little bit less overall effort when you're just kind of going to your cream of the crop or your creme de la creme and saying, look, we're just going to move here. And then at that point, it's really just a matter of finding a
Yeah.
space, versus having to go and reach out to people individually. And then you potentially also have to have conversations. You got to have some, you got to be able to have a little bit of salesmanship along with, the way
Mhm.
that you come across. Probably some soft skills are going to come in there too as well, with the way that you're talking to people. Now, were you the main person who basically went around and reached out to everyone individually to just start having those conversations as the project was basically kind of, at a point where, or at that phase where it was like, okay, now we need to start reaching out to some of these players that we have on our preliminary lists?
So yeah, so there's a team of people that we got together to do the messaging for the people who had to leave. So, and I was part of that team. I've been responsible mainly for um the squatters, right? That group of like people who are just kind of on the server and farming. They're not in our like main alliance shells or anything. They're just kind of like in these tertiary alliances out in, Daralan or whatever. So yeah, so those people I had assigned to me, I had probably, I don't know, 12 or something this time. But we had a whole team of people and we tried not to give everybody too much. So everybody had like I think between 8 and 12 different people to message. And that's just part of how we do it every season. We get a group of people and we just divide the work evenly. I won't say that it was like 100% smooth. I mean, it never is. Like, we had somebody who got kind of mouthy with one of our people, and we had to kind of like try to support him through talking through that conversation. We have other people who just like don't read, so they don't really understand what the expectations were for them, and so they're like, why are you telling me to migrate? Like, I thought I did okay. And we were like, well, you were like 220 out of 225, so like, no, you did not do okay. um yeah, so I mean, it's a delicate process. Like, we have an HR team, so we do that partially through our HR team.
Ooh, HR team.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was,
Yeah, 110 has a very advanced leadership structure. We have a lot of people contributing, but we hope that it leads to less burnout. That's the goal. But yeah, so like some people, their whole job is just to like message at the end of the season and be part of this group. So um and they do a fantastic job. A lot of times it's not a nice thing to have to do, but it definitely would be a lot worse because I think in total this season, we had 112 people who needed end of season messages. Those were either check-ins to be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, we know XYZ is going on. Like, are you going to be back for next season? Some of those were like, hey, I think it's going to be really hard for you to continue playing here. Like, do you want to consider migrating? And then, we have what we call the tier ones, which is like, hey, your performance is not where it needs to be for this kingdom. We really need you to leave. And so none of that is fun. Like, those conversations
no,
are not very enjoyable,
no.
but yeah.
I mean, listen. Speaking to people, it very much is an art form. I feel,
Mhm. Absolutely.
and for myself, being a part of multiple projects that I founded and kind of started across 3 different games now that I've done, being a part of Kingdom leadership, just being an average Joe member of a top kingdom when I was playing in Rock, and then working my way up the management ladder to eventually be a part of multiple departments, running multiple departments, being kind of the right hand of
Mhm.
the king and queen. It's just you very much learn a lot about kingdom dynamics, about the politics, which again, there is some that goes into it, as much as I'm sure people would
Mhm.
probably prefer it to not
Absolutely.
happen, right? You have these things
Yeah.
that will occur, but when it comes to the way that you deal with members, and especially in these kinds of situations, which we can make an effortless argument for, that it is sensitive, that it can be very sensitive, and having the right people in place to have those right conversations can make the world of difference. Between a player that potentially is like, you know what? Okay, like I hear what you're saying. I think you're making some good points. Yeah, I'll consider leaving. Versus maybe someone who doesn't come across the best, and then the player response is "F you. I'm just going to stay."
I know.
And
Yeah.
I guess
Well,
I'm
and I
curious.
mean,
Do you
we do
have any
have some of that
examples? Yeah, has
sometimes.
that happened at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Like, we've definitely had players in the past where either we don't assign two people because we know they don't get along, or like we have had situations where, like one person is talking to them initially and they're not responding well. And so then we have one of like the higher level people kind of step in and take over. So whether that's Doom or whether that's our head of HR or, whether that's another council member, we'll have those people kind of tag into the conversation.
Okay.
It's true also that like sometimes like the player brings us into those conversations too,
Hmm.
right? So there have been times where like, like the HR person messages them about their season performance, and then they come running to whoever their closest council member is, to be
Yeah.
like, hey, I got this message and like I don't really understand. And so, but it does require, it requires our leadership team to definitely talk to each other, understand what's going on. We're not perfect at it for sure, but I think we do a good job. We do the best we can at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it happens. I think there are people come to the game with a lot of different perspectives, and I think one of the big things that I've noticed is like, some people come to the game with a mindset that's very much like they are a part of the kingdom and they want to help the kingdom succeed. And then some players come like, they're like, I'm just blowing off steam at the end of the day. Like, I don't really care where I am or what I'm doing,
Hmm.
but like, I'm just showing up, you know? And so, like, those are two very different kinds of players, and those are two very different kinds of conversations we have to have with them about their performance, right? Like the player who wants to contribute to the kingdom is more motivated by that kind of like rhetoric around, like we really need you to help contribute in these ways. Whereas like the player who's just showing up, like they're not going to be motivated by that. They don't care, right? They're like, I use this as a way to pass the time after work, or, a way to blow off steam at the end of the day. And like, I don't really care if you want me to do more, I'm not going to do more. And so like the conversation that we have with them is very different.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's the tricky part is sometimes it's also about, like even when you're communicating, when you're, writing up alliance mails or you're doing Discord announcements or
Mhm.
you're even if you draft like DM templates, whatever it is, oftentimes it's how can I get like the shortest, most straightforward, most concise message across that
Yes.
doesn't take
Especially
that
when you're
much.
writing in game.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it's just like, how can I get this across in the fewest words possible, in the simplest way possible, to where it takes the least amount of time to read, least amount of time to comprehend, and hopefully there's no additional questions that'll be needed for any follow-up.
Yeah.
And like, and that's
I
often,
wish there was a way to craft the perfect
yeah,
message.
no, absolutely. And because I
Yeah.
remember I was one of the people who would write a lot of these, whether it was event mails, if it was, like we would do things like anonymous feedbacks. So like at the end of each season, I was the one who was
Yeah, we have
basic.
that too.
Yeah, I was in charge of crafting our anonymous feedback poll, and then we would send it out in a Discord announcement. We'd send it out in Kingsmail, and then I would also go through and I would DM like just any of like the maybe the more not so active people, or maybe the people I thought that maybe may not have read it, just so I can try and put some more eyes on it. And I would take the
Right.
time to do those things, and so just like those little things that you do, which is just kind of going that extra step. And a little bit of that extra mile, sometimes can mean a lot between, and even sometimes it can be the difference between getting 10 or 20, right? Double the amount of responses and feedback
Mhm.
that you end up hearing from people in your kingdom. And, I very much always liked doing it that way because it just never put pressure on anyone to have to name themselves. We're not like at some data palooza where you got to wear your name tag, what I mean? When you're just going around. And so it's like, yeah, just,
Yeah. Yeah.
submit your feedback and obviously, we want people to be able to do it, from a comfortable and a safe space where nobody feels compelled at that point
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have to say like, oh yeah, I'm Jim and I think you guys effing suck and I just want you to know, but here's my name. It's like, no, just hopefully
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the
Well, and
feedback,
we
right?
in our player feedback survey, definitely, it depends on the season. I think if the season has gone well, like we get a lot less negative feedback.
Yeah,
But if the season was hard for whatever reason, either there wasn't enough fighting or there
yeah.
was way too much fighting, like we'll hear about it in the end of season
Oh,
feedback form. Like
and that's the
people
thing.
people seem to think, we are gods and we just can't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we can
Here's my
control
magic
how
fairy
much the
wand.
enemy fights. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not how that works.
And no, and what's so funny about what you said is that's absolutely right because in a lot of cases when people are submitting feedback, it's part of the frame of the mindset for the player is that they are not privy to information
Mm.
you are privy to, or
Right.
they do not
Yeah,
keep up with the information that you publicly announce and state
that's
to
true.
explain what is happening leading up to the KVK starting, what has happened throughout the KVK, and then how did everything conclude. And so oftentimes you'll get people that will leave feedback and you're wondering to yourself, like, where is this person coming from? Did they not read any of our mails? It's just like and you're just like, oh my gosh, like just delete. No, I'm just joking. But
Oh my gosh. Yeah, have you seen those memes on COD memes that are like, this sign can't stop me because I can't read?
yeah, those are
Yeah,
great.
that one makes the rounds in our alliance chat at least a few times a season
Yeah.
because like we will get some people like rolling into the game being like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And then like they're just completely clueless to like
Yeah.
something we've been doing for the last like
Yeah.
4 hours or something, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's like, yo, just logged on. I'm at the last marker point. I'm fighting the enemy. Where is everyone? Like, bro, what are you doing? It's
What are you doing?
yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand.
Oh,
I mean, reading is hard.
absolutely. Absolutely. It is a challenge. Okay. Let me I could talk to you for hours just about so much of this other stuff. This has been great. But let me
Of course.
rein it back in if I will. If you see what I did there.
I
So
do see what you
fantastic. You're picking up what I'm putting down. Awesome.
did there.
So, okay, so you reached out to people. This is what I think is probably one of the I would argue this is the biggest part of your storyline is the fact that you guys got so many people that were willing to either pledge their tickets and take King and assist in doing the expulsion and basically donating those tickets, which is more or less what they're doing, right? It's like you guys are like the goodwill out here, or sorry, and or paying to put some kind of like a
Mhm.
fund together, like you were saying, where it's like okay, maybe everyone you put it into a PayPal or something like that, right? And it's like literally you guys have a real life
That's
freaking
literally what we did.
kingdom
Yeah.
bank. It's not just an in-game resource bank. You have a real currency bank for your kingdom. Just the fact that you got, I think you said it was about 60 people, give or take,
Mhm.
that were willing
Yeah.
to pledge one and or the other. That to me is so freaking awesome. And I feel like that is the biggest storyline here to me. I mean, obviously, the project, the fact that you guys had kind of a first round success the way you have, and you're going to keep it going. Obviously, as we stated with the lesser of the two evils, which this is one, but the fact that you got that many people that were willing to contribute because they either saw the bigger picture and just realized, okay, this is the situation we're in. This is the lesser of the two evils. It sucks, but it's better than if we did the other option. And then you had that many
Mhm.
people that were willing to
Absolutely.
commit. What was that like when you started getting, like, first off, did you even think that was going to be an option? And then,
I
when the
mean,
first one came through, what did you think?
Well, so I was really skeptical, I think, because so when you're raising funds for a migration to a new server,
Now,
the
this isn't like a
message is more
GoFundMe for
like,
like a new game project. I mean, like a new video game.
no, no, yeah. But like if we were raising funds to help people
Yeah,
migrate to a new server, the messaging is more positive in the sense that like, it's more like let's keep our community together. Like let's help and make sure everybody gets to come with us. Whereas like when you're doing fundraising for an expulsion project, the messaging is like help clean up the dead weight on our server. Like it's not positive,
yeah,
right? It's a little bit more negative, it's a little bit more edgy. And I hate referring to actual people as dead weight.
yeah,
Like that doesn't feel good.
yeah. I
So
mean, yeah,
like I was a little bit skeptical that we would even be able to raise all of the funds for the expulsion because I really felt like, like mentally the psychology of it just wasn't going to generate that much interest. I was really pleased to see how many people had the permits and were willing to give them. Like I think like I said, our server was very unprepared to migrate, but there was like a small core of people who had been like religiously collecting their permits. And those people, by and large, all of them committed their permits to the project, which was phenomenal. And, we had people who had only been with us for one season that were like, I don't have a lot of permits, but like here's what I do have and here's like I can give you some money to help with it also. And so like,
wow,
we I was really impressed by the community and like I think it really showed me a lot about like, who our core members are in terms of our spenders. But we also, I mean, the reason we had to raise funds in the first place was because we also had people who are free to play. They had been saving their permits, but they couldn't afford the $20 dragon ticket because they don't spend money on the game. And so like I was impressed by the number of people that we had for that too. It was about half and half, people that were willing and able to pay that extra 20 and people who needed us to help spot them that 20 in order to do the expulsion. So I was really impressed by it. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a long-tailed problem, so I don't think it's going to go away, but I was really glad to see everybody kind of coming together and putting their money where their mouth was or putting their permits where their mouth was, right? To say like, "Hey, we want
yeah,
to stay on this server." Because I was like, I understand you guys are resistant to migrating, but like, if we got to migrate, we got to migrate. And I was really glad to see people being like, nope, we're not going to migrate, and here's my tickets, so you don't have to. So
yeah.
that was good. That was good, and
And
it definitely, I think it shows how much of a community that we have here on 110.
no, absolutely. I mean, I feel like at this time you're preaching to the choir, and I'm the choir. Like I'm not even a part of there, and I was like, yeah, this is great. I mean, this so okay, and again, I feel like there's a little bit of underselling here because you. The next point I wanted to bring up was actually something you said just
Mhm.
briefly a little while ago, which is that these people had been some of your players had been saving permits, you said religiously, and however many
Mhm.
others were, they basically had to give up their opportunity to migrate. However many of them did that, depending on how many permits they had, but they
Yes.
basically had to give up their opportunity to migrate and double down and say, like, I'm here. This is the kingdom for me, and I am willing to give up
Yeah, I'm gonna give it
my
up for another
yeah,
year.
like my
Yeah.
get out of jail free card, right? If you're going to like a super extreme or something happened, and they're just like, listen, I need to bounce, or for whatever reason, and then they gave that like that. I mean,
Yeah,
talk
and we did
about
we did
falling
have
at the sword for
players that are
your
like,
yeah,
yes, yeah, and we did have players that are what I call rainy day players. Like the reason that they're collecting permits is because you never know what's going to
yeah,
happen. They've had to migrate before, they're worried about it, so they've been collecting. And and they were willing to give up their permits, and I didn't think they were going to be willing, like because you're right, like they're giving up their chance to migrate, and some of them, can't afford to buy the tickets outright. So if something happens, it's a risk. It's a risk. And so I don't think every player is willing to do it, but like I said, I
absolutely,
was I was really impressed and I was really pleased to see how many people were willing to lay it down for the kingdom.
man. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff that to me just makes such a good feel-good story. I don't hear about those things too often. And granted, I've been
No.
playing these games for, let's just say a hottish minute in the genre. And that's not something that comes across my desk all too often. And that's not to say that there's not other people that do it. There's not other kingdoms out there that do it. I'm sure there are. But to hear about it with this amount, and then the amount of finances that you have to think about, these players gave up in permit value, has to be in the thousands of
Yes.
dollars, just minimum. Maybe even exceeding, maybe even getting close to 10 grand. But I would say at least
Yeah.
thousands of dollars at minimum, conservatively, is how much these players basically helped out the kingdom to provide to help get players off.
Yeah, just in raw ticket value or raw migration permit value, in order to expel all the people we did, was about $7,500 worth of
Jeez.
permits.
I mean, listen, man.
And so yeah, so we raised more than double that in permits.
Jeez.
And then an additional $12,000, or not 12,000, $1,200 in cash in addition to that.
Oh my
So
God.
like the generosity really is like so invaluable. Like
Yeah.
I really can't put a price on it, but it's like um I think the thing is like if we had to do it in raw cash, I'm not sure we would have gotten there because like I said, our
Yeah.
kingdom is not a super spendy kingdom. Like we have a lot of people who are living in countries where the cost of living is pretty high, and like their jobs are not giving them a lot of money, and like we do have a lot of free to play players. We have a lot of low spenders, and so like I think if we had to raise it in purely funds, I don't think we would have gotten there. But because we could have people give their permits and do it this way, like I think that was the reason that we were successful. And so like I have to give my hats off to the devs a little bit for allowing that to be the case, right? Like I think a lot of people, when the discharge thing came out, they were like, oh, the king has to pay all this stuff. Well, no, like the king can share the load a little bit. Right. So the king has to not have an ego, that helps. But yeah, like if the king is willing to share the load a little bit and like help let everybody kind of come together and help out, then you can make it happen.
I mean, too bad they don't have a system in place where players can transfer their permits to like a
Donate
kingdom
permit
permit
street,
bank.
yeah. You even like we could we could help so many players migrate
Yeah.
if like we wouldn't have even had to do the expulsions, because there, like I said, there were people that were voluntarily willing to migrate,
Yeah.
but we expelled them because it was going to be cheaper to expel them than it was going to be to pay for their migration.
Yeah.
And if we had just been able to like give the permits to them, so devs, if you're listening, if you can give the permits to people, like we would be willing to do that. And like, and yeah, and then for a big expulsion project like this, like you wouldn't even have to
Yeah. Yeah.
transfer the king and like do all that stuff, because you could just give them to the king.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's like you either just allow for the individuals to transfer, or you say like, listen, send your permits to like the kingdom permit pool or the alliance permit pool, and then the R5 or officers can divvy up whoever has permissions to permits appropriately
Yeah.
for those people. I mean, any of those ways could have just made the situation overall a lot easier. Obviously, it doesn't get around the fact that you still have to pay for them to leave, but I'm sure logistically
Yeah.
it makes it a lot easier, especially because now you don't have to worry about the margin of responsibility on having to transfer king, which to me is probably the second biggest storyline of what you've said altogether, which is the fact that you were given
Yeah, we
Joe
transferred the king to
Schmo.
30 people in
Yeah.
5 days.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. You guys gave it. I see. Those are some stats I was looking for. 30 people, 30 Joe Schmoes that you gave king in 5 days, and every single one of them gave you king back. I
Give it
mean,
back.
if that itself is not job kingdom security, I don't know what is. That is
I mean,
ridiculous, but in the awesomest way possible that
yeah,
it is.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, like
I
I
mean, listen, were
was
you
doing
guys just
all of
like
it with
shitting
them
balls
live.
like at some point of just like, oh, okay.
Doom definitely was.
Okay.
He's a nervous one. Of the two of us, he's the nervous one. Like the first couple, I will say I did them on voice chat with the person doing it because I was a little bit nervous.
I gotta
And
feel
after
I
I'd
gotta feel a
done a
little
few of
safer
them,
about this.
I
Can
was
you screen
like,
share?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and so after a couple of them though, I was like, you know what? Like I think it's okay. Like I think we can trust them. And I think I can walk them through it without doing it. So I did do it. All of them were done live,
Okay.
but most of them were done like text, like Discord text.
Okay.
So yeah, and I did a couple on VC, people who either wanted extra help or, people at the beginning when I was a little nervous.
Well,
Um,
you also said earlier, if I heard you right, that some of the people you gave King to were only there for a season, have only been there for a season at 110.
right. Yeah. I mean, we've known them a little bit longer than that, but yeah.
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 But
So
yeah, I mean, yeah, just the, I mean,
there's a lot of trust involved.
no, yeah, I mean,
There's a
that's a little
lot of
bit,
trust
yeah, that's like
involved.
giving the baby the pistol. You know what I mean? It's just like,
I know. That's why I was saying, we had contingency
yeah,
plans, we had all this stuff that we brainstormed in
yeah,
advance because we were just like, this could go wrong. Like
yeah,
sometimes people don't turn
yeah,
out to be who you think they are.
yeah. No, yeah, you're like, listen, fam, if this
Yeah.
doesn't go well, we're gonna see ourselves tomorrow in BN's latest video. But
Yeah.
so,
We're gonna end up in a college drama video.
all right. Uh,
Civil War.
That's right. Civil War done unto themselves. But so okay, but the other thing about this is that, and I think this is probably the brighter side of that process that took place, is the fact that at the end of the day, and I can tell you because I was like this when I played, like it was one of those things where if a situation like when I was playing in Rock and I was just a standard regular member, if there was ever like if the king or the queen or management came to me and said, "Hey, can you help us out by doing this? We just need to transfer you king for like 30 minutes or something," I would have been the first person to jump and say, "Yeah, sure. Just let me know what to do. Give me the step. Who am I transferring it to after?" And the reason I say that is because to me, for people that are there in your kingdom, especially those people that are there for the right reasons, to them, they just view that as, hey, this is an opportunity for me to help out. And that's like all it is.
Right.
It doesn't go beyond that. It's
Yeah.
just, how can I assist? How can I contribute? Even if it's just a small thing that helps make someone else's life or the management team's lives a little bit easier, I'm down to do that. And the fact that that happened for you guys 30 times in a row, I mean, to me, for the amount of kingdoms I've played in, the amount of kingdoms I've seen and I talk with, that to me, along with some of the other points I've mentioned, those to me are shining beacons. Those are unique outliers that only can be praised, that only can be highlighted for just being a great environment to be a part of and to be playing in. And again, I say that objectively. I'm never one, like even any of the videos or interviews I've done, no one ever hears me saying like, oh yeah, you guys need to go migrate here or migrate there. I'm never going to be like that. But I like to talk out. I like to talk through these things because I do think it's important for people to be able, especially, for those people that are listening to this. And that's not to say that, as I stated before earlier, right? It's to say that other kingdoms don't do this and other players. I'm sure there's a number of other kingdoms and a number of other management teams that are already doing things like this. But to me, I do think it's important that we get opportunities to talk with people like you, Raina, and others that, especially when you are so invested into said project, right, for you leading it, you know the ins and outs of it. So it's great to be able to have a conversation with someone like yourself who can speak to it because you believe in it. It's not like you just joined or you heard about it from someone else, but you're in it. So you're a part of it day in and day out to give us that blueprint, to give us that before and after, to give us, listen, it's not all sunshines and rainbows, as you've already articulated throughout our call here so far. There were some challenges in getting to this point, and there was a lot of risk. But the fact is that you guys, as you said, you had contingencies, you had layers of security in place, and you felt that the risk going in this direction was less of a risk than going in the other direction, which would have been you guys having a group that migrated out. So, anyways, I just
Yeah,
wanted to say all that just to
I
say like
definitely
hats off
think,
to you guys because I think that's amazing.
yeah. I mean, thank you. I think we did a really good job. We started at 4,318 migration points, which is really high, really far over capacity, and we ended at about 3,750. So we dropped um about 550 points, which is really crazy to do in one season,
Hmm.
but I mean, it was so desperately needed in order for our recruitment and for our matchmaking and like for our the continued health of our kingdom. And like, I'm really glad that we got to do it. And like the reason that I approached you wanting to talk about this is because I haven't really heard anybody talking about the logistics of like how to do this. Like we saw, Echo migrate to a new kingdom. We saw TFS migrate to a new kingdom. We saw like this season BDO and SSG merged into a new kingdom.
Hmm.
And like nobody ever really talks about the mechanics of it. It's like, so, if there's newer kingdoms out there or new alliance leaders, because like I know I've been doing this for a long time, but not everybody has. So like if there's new alliance leaders out there wondering, like how the heck do I make this work? It is possible.
Yeah.
You have options. You just need people in your crew to like help you put it all together. You need to ask the right questions. You need to message people. You need to talk to them. Like it's not easy, but you can do it.
No, absolutely. And I hope this will go down as a nice feel good story and a good reference for any kingdoms out there who want to just stay where they're at. Like they don't want to have to be forced to migrate out and
Absolutely.
rebuild and go through the process over again, even though if they are able to do that, some things will be easier and some other challenges will still
Mhm.
arise from that. But if they're able to stay where they are, I think everyone at the end of the day would love to stay in the kingdom they started in without having to move. And I guess,
Yeah.
regardless of how people feel about the system, at least it is one option, albeit the only option
Mhm.
with discharging that you can get that done. I guess to round things out, I want to ask you, how would you like to see the system be? Like, are you okay with the fact that under the current discharge system, you have to pay? Do you feel like it should be half that you have to pay? Do you feel like, again, I'm talking anything from where we're at to like maybe going back to like spending gems, to kick people. Like, is it, I guess I'm just curious, how do you feel
Uh,
about the current system? And is there anything you would change?
yeah, I mean, going back to where we were at the top of the interview, I think the ideal system isn't quite such a burden on the kingdom itself. I think there's a lot of reasons to discharge players. I understand why the devs are doing it this way, because they don't want us using discharges in place of like players actually having to migrate, and they don't want, they don't want us to abuse the system. But I think having to pay both the full permit cost and the $20, I think I would be willing to do as much as like half the permit cost
Okay.
and maybe not the $20, or I'd be willing to pay the $20 and not the permits. Like I think there's a lot of different variations here. I don't necessarily know because I have been in other games where it's much cheaper to migrate, and obviously at the beginning of this game it was very cheap to migrate, and so people kind of did things to each other back then that were not great. Like I was in a server once
Yeah.
that got sabotaged because our enemy decided to migrate a bunch of farms into our server and fill it up, right?
Hmm.
So like I definitely see the potential for abuse. I definitely understand why the cost is high. They
Yeah.
really want people to think about it before they do it. But I think with the limitations that we already have, right? Like you cannot discharge a player who was in the top 150 merits last season. You can't, like, you have to pay the permits, you have to pay the $20, plus there's a 5-day cooldown, like all of this stuff. I really think like there's enough safeguards in place that they could lower the cost at least a little bit, because I do think it's a little bit high. And like for a kingdom, we're a mid kind of spending kingdom in the grand scheme of things. But there are like much, much smaller kingdoms out there that don't really have any spenders. And like asking them to pay $20 per person to discharge just because they have somebody on their server that they don't want there anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not the end of the world to like send them to the safe zone. It wouldn't be the end of the world, right? In your version, to send them to like, a prison server. It's not, I mean, is it really a prison? You can sit there and farm
No,
and
no,
like
no, no.
nobody
It's
attacks
like
you. Like
Gilligan's Island. You
it's
know what I mean?
yeah, it's like the safest thing that can happen
Yeah.
to you, really.
Yeah.
Like so it's kind of like, I don't think it's the worst thing that can happen to you to be discharged from a server. And I understand like, they want to prevent kings from abusing it, but like your king runs your server. So like if the
Yeah,
king
and
doesn't like you, like you probably want to find somewhere to be
yeah,
anyway.
and this is the thing is that there's always going to be plenty of servers and kingdoms out there. It's not
Absolutely.
like
Yeah, and
there's
growing,
yeah, it's not like there's some kind of, drought of
scarcity.
yeah, exactly, of
Yeah.
eligible kingdoms that players could go to. But the idea being is that like, and that's why I like my idea is because when you discharge someone, right, you could still, like you said, you could still have some of those limitations, like the cooldowns, et cetera, if you want to have some of those restrictions in there, or at least um, layers there or hurdles. And then, and then once that goes through, they just, they end up, and that's the thing, you don't have to, you could even do it where, like, again, you don't have to pay for anything. They just, once they get discharged, they go to that discharge kingdom.
And they can work on migrating themselves,
Exactly.
like
But they
just
could
like
do it
any
at a little bit of
player.
an accelerated pace, so you get a little bit of a benefit from it, and it's a win-win. It's not like the devs
Yeah.
are sacrificing a lot of finances because you're only doubling the rate from that, like, so you're just going from 1 to 2 permits a week, right, that they can get from Alliance, and then you're giving them a 10%
Mhm.
discount on each permit bundle that they buy. And I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
that's massively impactful, right, in those situations, because you're still going to have people that will buy permits in the home kingdom they're in. Nobody's going to want to get discharged out to this kingdom just so they can, like, don't get me wrong, maybe some, but like I'm talking people who are like fighting and they want to play. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, discharge me, and then I'm
Yeah.
going to have to buy all these permits just to come back. Like that doesn't make any sense. But again,
Yeah, exactly.
like,
Like it's not really reasonable to expect that players are going to abuse it in that manner
yeah.
for sure.
But anyways, like for me, that's what I like. I think to me that makes the most sense. I think that's the easiest because then the burden doesn't fall on the kings and queens and the players there. And don't get me wrong, like, in your guys' situation, I'm sure if you could have said like, yeah, I'd rather save all this money and have all their players save all their permits and not have to do this versus going through it and doing it and it working out still
Absolutely.
really well. I'm sure you'll about like 100
Mhm.
times. You're like, yeah, we'd rather not spend any money and just do it.
Yeah, like if this money could have gone to like building their accounts
Yeah.
instead, absolutely. Like I would much rather that go there, and not have to deal with this at all. But it's just, you know,
No,
it's the truth, the reality of the game that we've all come to know and love.
that's right. Makes my face hurt. All right. Well, with that, Raina, I will pass it to you lastly. As we always like to end
Okay.
out, right? Any shout outs, declarations, uh, finger pointing, shots fires, fired shots, whatever you want to give, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say a huge thank you to, of course, the 60 people who pledged their permits or their money, whether we used it already or not, because I think, without them, this project could not have happened. We would still be full. And we'd be looking at migrating. So, super huge thank you to them. Also, a huge thank you to our HR team who helps with the player management. And then a huge thank you also to Doom, who's my co R5, and Lady Vex, who's the lawyer of 110, who helped with all the pledges and getting the money secured and all that kind of stuff. So thanks to all of them. And then my final plug is since we do have room, 110 is desperately in need of more infantry and cavalry players. Come join me. I'm an infantry player. Come join me and play, and we'll kick ass.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Like
Am
a
I allowed to say
possum.
that?
All right. Well, Raina, thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. So I really appreciate the time. Hopefully, anyone will find this somewhat useful or beneficial if they are in any kind of a similar situation or maybe find themselves in one in the future. So that is going to be it for us. We will go ahead and sign off now, but hopefully you all out there listening enjoyed the conversation. Again, huge shout out to Raina for taking some time out of her day to come and have a chat with me. This has been fantastic. And that's it for us. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.